January 3rd, 2026, 2:01 a.m. Explosions shattered the Venezuelan night. Delta Force helicopters scream 100 feet above Caribbean waters. Inside Fort Tiuna, the most fortified compound in Venezuela, a 63-year-old man in pajamas hears his wife say, "I think I hear aircraft outside." 3 minutes. That's all the warning Nicolas Maduro gets before American Special Forces, wearing night vision goggles, crash through his doors. He's no ordinary target. He's a sitting head of state with the largest bounty in U.S. history on his head, $50 million. But here's what makes this raid insane. The CIA didn't just find him. They had someone inside his inner circle watching his every move for months. Someone close enough to know where he slept, what he ate, even what his pets were named. How the most fortified compound in South America fell in minutes. The U.S. didn't just capture Maduro that night. They executed the most audacious military operation since the bin Laden raid. How did the CIA infiltrate Maduro's inner circle? And what secrets is Venezuela's captured dictator about to reveal in a Manhattan courtroom? A core team worked on the Maduro capture in secret. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. They held daily meetings. They briefed Trump regularly. They coordinated with Delta Force, the Army's elite counterterrorism unit. The soldiers built a full-scale replica of Maduro's compound, based on intelligence the CIA had gathered. They practiced the raid over and over. They rehearsed with massive blowtorches in case they needed to cut through the steel walls of Maduro's safe room. Then the weather turned bad over Caracas. The helicopters needed visual flight conditions to navigate the city at night. They waited. Meanwhile, Trump made one final attempt at diplomacy. Roughly a week before the raid, he called Maduro directly. "You gotta surrender," Trump told him during that phone call. By that point, an armada of U.S. warships was visible off Venezuela's coast. The aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford was in the Caribbean. The amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima was positioned in international waters. The message was unmistakable. At 10:46 p.m. on Friday, January 2nd, 2026, Trump gave the final order. Execute. The operation launched from 20 different bases across the Western Hemisphere. Over 150 aircraft took off into the night. F-22 Raptors, F-35 Lightnings, F-18 Super Hornets, EA-18 Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2 Hawkeye surveillance aircraft, and dozens of helicopters carrying the extraction force. The helicopters flew 100 feet above the water to avoid radar detection. Inside were roughly 200 Americans, Delta Force operators, DEA agents, and other federal law enforcement personnel. As they approached Venezuelan airspace at 2 a.m. in Caracas time, the air campaign began. U.S. aircraft struck radar installations and communications nodes across 4 Venezuelan states: Caracas, La Guaira, Miranda, and Aragua. The bombardment disabled Venezuela's air defense network. Russian-supplied radar systems went dark. Command centers lost communication with their units. Venezuelan fighter jets stayed grounded. The entire military response was paralyzed within minutes. Residents of Caracas woke to explosions. They filmed low-flying jets from their windows. Power went out across large sections of the city. Some thought it was an earthquake. Others knew immediately what was happening. The helicopters raced toward Fort Tiuna. They came under fire during the approach. One helicopter took hits but remained flyable. The crews returned fire with overwhelming force. At exactly 2:01 a.m., the helicopters descended into Maduro's compound. Delta Force operators fast-roped to the ground. They threw flashbang grenades. They breached doors. They cleared rooms systematically. Maduro and his wife tried to reach the steel door of their safe room. They didn't make it. The compound's defenses collapsed. Venezuelan soldiers and Cuban security personnel fought back. At least 40 people died in the firefight. Some American soldiers were injured, but none were killed. Maduro and Flores surrendered. DEA agents zip-tied their hands. They were processed on site, photographed, and prepared for transport. The extraction took less than an hour from touchdown to wheels up. The helicopters lifted off with their captives and flew to the USS Iwo Jima, waiting in international waters. And just like that, Nicolas Maduro's 13-year rule over Venezuela ended. At 3 a.m., hours before any official U.S. announcement, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that the United States had carried out a major strike against Venezuela. He shared photos showing Maduro on a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Iwo Jima. Later that morning, Trump spoke at a press conference at Mar-a-Lago. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stood beside him and made it clear this didn't have to happen. The case had been prepared for years. All the U.S. needed was Maduro himself. The world reacted immediately. The United Nations held an emergency meeting where the Secretary General warned this could set a dangerous precedent and said international law may have been violated. In Colombia, Argentina, Peru, Ecuador, and Chile, crowds danced and chanted for a free Venezuela. Inside Venezuela, reactions were mixed. Maduro's supporters protested in Caracas, demanding his return. Many others stayed silent, unsure what would happen next. The military did nothing. Hours later, the defense minister condemned the U.S. action, but no troops moved and no retaliation followed. Within a day, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as interim president, questioned whether Maduro was alive, and asked for proof. At the same time, she signaled a willingness to work with U.S. officials under international law. Trump, however, made his intentions clear. He said the U.S. would run Venezuela during a transition period. He warned Rodriguez not to resist and demanded full access for American oil companies. At that point, the message was obvious. This wasn't just about Maduro. It was about regime change. It was about oil. And it was about reasserting American power in Latin America. And Nicolas Maduro, Trump suggested, was only the beginning. Maduro was flown from a U.S. Navy ship to New York, surrounded by federal agents. Cameras captured him stepping off the plane, exhausted and defeated. From there, he was taken to Manhattan for processing and later transferred to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. On January 5th, Maduro and his wife appeared in federal court. The room was packed with media, officials, and Venezuelan expats. Maduro spoke briefly, saying he was still the president of Venezuela and called himself a prisoner of war. He pleaded not guilty, insisting he was innocent. His wife also pleaded not guilty. U.S. prosecutors filed serious charges, including narco-terrorism and conspiracy drug trafficking, and possession of machine guns. If convicted, Maduro could face life in prison. His trial is set for March 17, 2026. The arrest has sparked major controversy. As this goes to press, Nicolas Maduro sits in a cell in Brooklyn. The outcome seems preordained. The evidence is overwhelming. The prosecution has witnesses, documents, recordings. Maduro's lawyers will fight, but the odds are against them. In Venezuela, the transition is messy and uncertain. The opposition is maneuvering for position. In Washington, officials are already eyeing the next target. Cuba? Nicaragua? Somewhere else? Will Venezuela become a democracy? Was this the end of a narco-state or the beginning of a far more dangerous era? Will Venezuela finally breathe free, or will chaos fill the vacuum? And if this line has been crossed once, how many more times will it be crossed again? History isn't over. It's just entering its most dangerous chapter.